I bet you didn't know that there was a witch that burned down a city in Mississippi. I'm sorry, there was a what? Yeah, you heard me. I'll tell you about it, but I gotta clean my kitchen, so y'all just settle in. So supposedly there was an old lady who used to live along the Yazoo River, which back then was a really popular place for men to fish. So it was said that this old lady was luring fishermen off their boats onto land and torturing them. Eventually, the townspeople catch wind of this, and they go out there and they catch her actually in the act of torturing the fishermen. So they naturally call the sheriff. Well, the sheriff goes out there and he ends up chasing the witch through swamp. So back then, Yazoo City had a whole lot of swampland. So the sheriff's out there trying to catch her, chasing her throughout the swampland. Now, the sheriff finally catches up to the witch, but when he does, he sees that she's half drowned in quicksand. So while she's sinking, she swears revenge on the city of Yazoo City and the townspeople, saying something along the lines of, in 20 years, I'm going to come back and I'm going to burn this place to the ground. So the witch drowns and dies, and, the town people fish her out of the quicksand and they bury her in the cemetery. Why? Probably just to make sure she's dead. So they kind of just basically ignore her warning for the most part. That is until May 25th, 1904. About 20 years later. On that day, an infamous fire breaks out in town, and it burns down nearly every single business there. That's a total of 324 buildings and residents all around the town. Now, this is 20 years later, mind you, after the witch dies. Now, there are a lot of theories about how the fire actually broke out, but none of them are really conclusive and can't really be proven. The most popular theory is that the fire actually broke out in the parlor of a young lady by the name of Miss Wise. And they think it happened in her parlor because it was supposed to be her wedding later that day. And you just have to remember that this is the early 1900s, so they're still pretty heavily reliant on candles and lanterns and all that stuff, not only to see, but also it's a wedding, so they're probably decorating with candles and stuff. And if you don't watch a candle, you can easily get a stray flame, catch a curtain, and then boom, the whole house is up on fire, because most of those buildings were probably built out of wood. And with them being so close together, one building goes up, the next one goes up, and then before you know it, you have an all-out inferno all around the town. So that's not too far-fetched of a theory. But what that doesn't account for is the winds during that time. So a lot of people were saying that during that time, there were some pretty strong, harsh winds blowing while the fire was erupting. And you have to think, this is May in Mississippi. I'm from Mississippi, born and raised. And May in Mississippi, we don't have strong winds during that time of year. I mean, it's like late spring, early summer. I say hell's oven is basically preheating during that time. It's not quite hot yet, but baby, it's gonna get there. So you wouldn't really expect there to be like kite flying weather or even worse, gale force wind. So witnesses also said that during that time, the wind seemed like they were pushing the flames, and that the flames were like mysteriously jumping through the air from building to building in like a really supernatural and unusual way. And the creepiest part of all is that when you look back in the reports for the weather in that area, there are 0 official reports for unusually high winds in that area on that day during that time. None whatsoever. So what I failed to mention earlier is that when the townspeople fished the witch out of the quicksand and buried her, they buried her in Glenwood Cemetery, but they didn't bury her in like a usual way. So she was buried in the midst of Glenwood Cemetery, and the townspeople had these huge wrought iron chain put around the perimeter of her grave. I guess that was like a superstitious way to keep her spirit bound in the grave so she couldn't escape. And that's important because after the town burned, and everything was said and done, a group of people went to the cemetery because they remember what the witch said. And when they visited her grave, they found that one of the chain links or the chain had snapped in two. All clean. And so is the legend of the Witch of Yazoo. If you want to learn more about the witch, you can go to visityazoo.org to learn more about the story. Or if you're ever in Yazoo, the city's tourism and hospitality department does do tours of Yazoo, which includes Glenwood Cemetery. Yes, the witch's grave is still there. Yes, you can visit it. Yes, I have gone. And as someone whose favorite holiday is Halloween, I will say it is creepy. But would you go? Are you scared of the witch?